Well, good morning, dear viewer, dear listener. You can see we are upside down. No, not quite. I was going to say Pat's on top of me. That might be misleading. Pat is in the upper tier and I am in the lower tier, and as suits my position in life. Pat, are you feeling
Uh,
mighty there? Are you feeling
oh
like
no,
God looking
here's
down
here.
on the world?
No, he's here. And technology, we're side by side.
We
What's that
both
old
know,
song?
we both know
Side
sweet.
by side. What's that song, Jude? I can't remember. Side by side. It's
Uh,
famous during the Second World War, if I remember correctly.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing we can do. But actually, I'm going to make an appeal now, not to you, Pat. You could just have a little snooze there. Dear
Yeah.
listener, dear viewer, if you know how we can set this Zoom so it was the way it always was, that is to say, responsive to whoever was speaking, that their picture would fill the whole frame and not this two-tier thing. If you know how to do that, contact me or contact Pat. Do it, will you please? Because I have spent the last 3 weeks agonizing, trying all sorts of things. Pat suggested several things. We tried those this morning. None of them will do. So we're relying on you. If you want the real deal as was, you'll have to come up and help us. Okay, how can we get it so that when anyone speaks, they fill the entire frame? Okay, Pat, do you think if I converted them, do you think will they help us, or
Oh yeah.
will
Not so
will they
maybe I
just?
don't know what you see. I don't know where the problem is at your end or mine, but anyway, here we go.
It's there. Right? It just happened. The gods decided. Okay, well,
The tech gods decided. Yeah, go
yeah.
for it.
Well, speaking of tech gods, we're going to incidentally be fairly sharp and short today. We're going to start with two demigods. We're going to move on then to the question of uh, the left in the Dáil and whether coming together is any prospect. And then I don't know, you didn't see this, maybe Pat, I should have told you. There's a guy called Kevin Barry. Now, not the original Kevin Barry. He's a
I,
novelist and a
yeah.
very good one too, actually. And he has a piece in the Irish Times today about he moved to Sligo, rural Sligo. I thought it
Yeah.
was very interesting. So those are the
Yeah.
three topics, except we think of something else in the meantime. First of all, to the two demigods. And that's actually how I think of them, Pat, are fighting about power. One has got political power and quite a hefty amount of financial power as well. The other is enormous financial power. I'm speaking, of course, of Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and they've had a falling out. Do you think, Pat, this has just crossed my mind, do you think is this by any chance put up, pretend to take people's attention away from other things?
No, Jude, I don't know. I think it's far too serious. I think it's gone way beyond that. Like uh, Trump has threatened to take away government subsidies for electric cars. He's threatened to cancel the contract for SpaceX, whatever else. That is there was 3 billion in subsidies for Musk's various companies.
Yeah.
Jude, that's serious. The companies Musk following their wee spat last night. Uh, Trump's companies dropped 150 billion in values. Basically, what it is, Musk thinks Trump's trying to screw him in regard to electric vehicles. He also has some concerns about various other things in this big, beautiful bill, spending bill that Trump is putting through.
Uh-huh.
And last night he came. It's been going on in the background, rumbling away. But last night it got personal, and Musk has basically said the reason the Epstein file has not been published, though the Jeffrey Epstein file, is because Trump is in it,
Whoa.
etc. etc. Now, Jude, that is quite serious because
Uh,
it's not, look at the world looking in at this. The markets have reacted. The political fallout has got to be enormous. And Jude, if this is all a setup, it's doing massive damage to Trump. It's doing massive damage to Musk. It's doing massive damage to the reputational values of America. And the world is looking on, going, this place is getting more insane by the day.
but I agree, all right. And you are right. That's an astonishing figure. 150 billion the shares in
Yeah.
Tesla went down. But you
I think
see,
it dropped, by the way, Jude, I think it dropped down to 140, but at one stage it was 152 billion losses.
oh, geez, you can't get your head around that amount of money.
Yeah.
But you see, these
Yeah.
guys have so many billions and more billions after that that I think they can handle that kind of thing. I mean, Elon
Yeah.
Musk will not be signing on for a welfare check anytime soon. But
Uh,
if you go on Trump's past record, the chances are he'll change his mind tomorrow and he'll say, Elon is my friend. Like all
uh,
friends, we have a little falling out, but we're now chums again. I suspect that'll happen.
that could, Jude. By the way, they just cut across you. Last Friday, Musk was wearing a hat. Trump was right about everything, and they left. And Trump said he was on last night. And he said Elon said some really nice things about me, really, really nice things, and all that, and all the rest of it, Jude. But Jesus, Jude, surely the Republicans somewhere will grow a set and sort of say, "Wait a minute, this is insane." Like he's insulted the American, um, Ukrainians. He had to go with South Africans. They're cutting they've all the civil rights programs they've cut. They're trying to attack Harvard and various other universities. They want to take over Greenland. They want to make Canada the 51st state. No, is this just chaos for the sake of chaos, or as America, like the Roman Empire, it sort of fell on itself because it was the damage was done from within, not without.
I suspect that will happen eventually. I don't know how long it'll take, but it could well happen before the end of his term of office. But Pat, you mentioned a
Yeah.
number of, can you list those again? You mentioned about five things. Um, I'm trying to think what they were now because
Well, he's going to take over Canada,
oh yeah,
51st
yeah,
state.
we're going to take over
Uh,
Canada.
he-
I mean, everybody knows that's not going to happen. And the Prime Minister of
he's
Canada
going to take
told
over.
them,
He's going to take over Greenland because he says it's for American
no,
security. It's not
he's not going
American
to take.
security, Jude.
He might take over
Uh,
Greenland. He might persuade the Greenlanders to sell out.
yeah, but Jude, he's saying it's for American security, Jude. It's
Uh,
for gas and oil and everything that's underneath
you
there.
see,
You
I
know,
think
the
that's a
Russians have not
possibility.
invaded.
I think that's a
What?
possibility. But there's a couple of others you mentioned, and I was thinking that,
Yeah, well, the thing about Harvard
oh
and
yeah,
Columbia,
yeah. This is
yeah,
his base loves that stuff. They detest
yeah,
these snobs, these academics, these know-it-all experts, and that goes down tremendously well with them. Actually, I think that Harvard's going to fight back. And I was watching a thing on YouTube last night, and it was the valedictorian address by a
yeah,
student at MIT. And she was
yeah,
clearly from Middle Eastern extraction, dark
yeah,
features, long hair. And she lashed into Israel. And showed you a shot of the fellow students. And in the front
yeah,
row, there were a number of women, and I think one or two men who were like her from, I'd say, Middle East or somewhere like that.
yeah,
But beside them were sitting a couple of guys wearing the little Jewish skull cap thing,
yeah,
and they
yeah,
weren't liking it at all. But she really spoke
mm,
out fearlessly. She said this was
yeah,
genocide. She didn't hold back for a second. So I think that the Trump maybe he's bitten off more than he can chew when it comes to the universities. Some of them
yeah,
fold like Columbia, but I think a lot of them are saying, we've got to find a way of getting around this. And I
yeah.
think if they hold their nerve, they will, because Trump it appeals to his base, but to everybody else, they think it's bloody awful. Do you think?
Yeah, but isn't it? It's basically Trump is the president of America. Musk is the richest man in the world.
Yeah,
There were two massive egos in the room. I think there was
yeah,
only one room for one emperor,
yeah,
and,
yeah,
and
yeah,
Trump is it. Like I think you actually said a couple of weeks ago, it was only a matter of time before they fell out because that's the nature of the beast, and
yeah.
it's happened. But Jude, I think anybody tries to, and I think they're going to try and spin it. The Republican Party, this is just a falling out of it. But Jude, the implications of this are much, much more serious. But by the way, Jude, see if it's true that Trump is sitting on the Epstein file because he's in it. You know, maybe we're past the whole thing about morals and truth society, that it doesn't matter because it seems to be that Trump, they have sort of normalized gangsterism in the White House.
But you see, if you stop to think about it for a minute, what Musk has said is Trump is in the Epstein file. But he's not saying that he's in the Epstein file and that he, was an associate, had anything to do with the trafficking of young girls, all that stuff. He just says he's in the file. So by the time
But Jude, I think the application that Trump's or
Musk,
Musk is making, push it a bit further, and I will provide the proof.
Well, of course, I don't know. He might just be
Dude,
bluffing,
he
but
had access. He remember when he was the Department of Government Efficiency.
yeah,
They had access to a hell of a lot of files. So
yeah.
who's to say Elon and his friends didn't download quite a few of the files, government files? Remember too, Robert Mueller in the last wasn't it Robert Mueller in the last Trump? He this thing about Russian interference,
Mm.
and they were going to impeach him. Mueller investigated a whole lot of stuff. His report was never published.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it could be very damaging to him. It might be that Musk knows that Trump is implicated deeply in this Epstein file and he's just sort of feeding it out by degrees. On the other hand, I mean, they're, as I say, they're like demigods. Musk is huge, the richest man in the world. Trump is the most powerful man in the world and he's got an awful lot of money. I can't see those two guys really falling out permanently. I mean,
Yeah,
they're so like each other. Uh, they both
yeah.
have the same fascist tendencies. I just think that you'll find that with all these things with Trump that he changes his mind. I could be wrong. Could be wrong. I hope I am. But I have a notion they'll shake hands or kiss and make up. You know.
Did you ever think you'd live that long to see what's happening in America? They've got it. The civil rights movements. They've got it. The education. They're actually trying to ban certain books in schools. I'm not going to repeat all the other things, but the whole social fabric. Uh, eh, eh, Trump allows in people from South Africa. What is it? 1,300 white people has banned people from 12 other African countries. It's
Hmm.
just now straightforward racism. Basically, he's saying we want America white again.
Yeah, yeah. Incidentally, I mean, I know this is slight side road, but did you see where Micheál Martin did a speech and talked about the fact that there were some Nigerian students who are being sent back to their own country?
Let me fill you in. I was going to mention it. There was a flight yesterday, five children and I think 30 adults out of Ireland. It's the third flight, and Jim O'Callaghan was on yesterday on News at One. He says it's not pleasant. Now, I was reading this morning on the Irish Times, the school principal at, I think it's St. James's School in Dublin 12, maybe, or Dublin 8, I can't remember.
Hmm.
He was very upset about it. He said, these kids were part of the school fabric. He says they were on our football team and all the rest. And he says we are very, very upset. He says the teachers are very upset. And he says we're trying to set the kids look to their friends. He says they didn't see the color of these kids' skin. He says they're gone. But now, in fairness to Jim O'Callaghan, he says he doesn't like this at all. This deportation. But Jude, the Republic of Ireland's getting tough on illegal immigration, and I think, in fairness, it's going to play very well with a lot of people
Oh yeah.
because we were getting overrun slightly, and there's no doubt about it. Jude, there's a fine line between being very helpful and being very fair and trying to look after people, and then becoming a soft touch. And I think we were verging over that side.
Uh-huh.
And by the way, I'm speaking as a person who totally believes that we should have taken on people from Ukraine. We should have a fair asylum system.
Mhm. I would agree with you, but I wouldn't use the word overrun. I would say it should need to be regulated, and there are
Uh,
people at the point where they
it has to be
apply.
rules based, Jude.
At the point where they apply, I mean, what in God's name, if these people, the parents, were here illegally in the South
Yeah,
illegally, right?
yeah,
What were they doing, or what was the government doing that they waited 4 or 5 years before they said you've got
yeah,
to go home? Because that's what created the problem for the children. They were well embedded in
yeah,
the school and sport and so on, and that must be pretty hard for them to be tearing that up.
yeah,
It's bound to be damaging,
yeah,
in fact. So I would
yeah.
agree that any country has, or any, well, state, I nearly call the South a country, but the state, any state has got a right to decide what its policy will be with regard to immigrants. And Ireland should
Yeah,
have a policy on that and they should enforce it, preferably before the people come to
yeah,
Ireland. It's when you allow them to
yeah,
come in and then you start seeing their face and there's all sorts of complications. The one thing I'm concerned about is that it looks just a tiny bit as if the far right go around waving the tricolour and saying Ireland's full and stuff like that, that they have succeeded
it's
in
not full.
shifting the government towards the right. And I don't like that. I don't like that. I think
No,
there's
I
a
don't look at it. But Jude, in fairness, I think O'Callaghan, to his credit, isn't one of those far right type. But he
No.
says without a rules-based asylum system, he says anybody can come in, and whether they get then asylum status is irrelevant. They just come here and they come in. Jude, they're talking about guys that come on, get on planes and tear up their passports, and then
Mm.
where you going, where you from, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it has been open to abuse. But I agree with you totally, Jude. Our asylum policy should not be based on the thugs on the far right, and they are thugs because they're racist. I've seen them in action. So these are people who are willing to attack Yardy, burn down shops, and all the rest, and they bust them in. There was a one in Letterkenny not that long ago, and they said there's something like 27 buses came in from other places. So don't tell me it doesn't rent a mob.
Well, see, I think the idea is that they'll be seem so many of them in the way they're organized for these demonstrations that people think, oh, that's the real public opinion. That the
No, it's
government are
not.
hiding it and they're not that they don't represent the real public opinion. These are the real lived experiences of Irish
Yeah,
people. And hear what they're saying. They're
yeah,
saying we're full, get them out, and so on. I think that's deadly dangerous. And I hope the Irish people
yeah.
in the South have enough bloody guts to see what those guys are trying to do. Another thing, if I was in the South and even in the North, I feel very irritated where these guys are going around waving a flag and saying essentially that they represent Irish opinion. I mean, who the hell do you think you are? How dare you say that you represent Irish opinion? How dare you tell us facts about immigration? You probably know sweet Fanny Adams about the numbers. You've just sort of caught up in this fever of, oh, let's get the buggers out. You know, the kind of thinking that sets fire to tents that are along the canal or wrecks them or attacks homes or daubs them with graffiti, racist graffiti.
I
So
do, do, did you the type? I've seen it frequently on social media. Let's look after our own first. These are the type of people, Jude, have never looked after our own. But this is a sort of thing. The other thing is as well, Jude, that which I always take grave exception to. These people run around with a flag and call themselves patriots. You know, that's what the Trump has done in America too. They
yeah,
call themselves patriots. What they should really call themselves is racists. They're
uh,
not patriots. They're racists. They run around with the Irish flag and get the immigrants out and get them. We don't want any immigrants here and all the rest. Dude, there are legitimate concerns by a lot of legitimate people, but let those people speak first, not the far right who are racist. And
yeah.
by the way, they make a lot of noise. And by the way, they are organized. Let's get that clear as well. Some people think that's disorganized. No, it's not. They are people stirring us this stuff up. And there are several people. If you go, there's a couple in Donegal, the same faces all the time on social media, beating this drum.
I suspect that there are links between them and the far right in the States. I
Yeah,
suspect there's links between them and the Reform Party in the UK and God
yeah,
knows where else throughout Europe. They like, for example, Nigel Farage is a good mate of Trump's. You know,
yeah.
what's going on
Uh,
there? The only thing they have in common is that they're both right wingers,
Yeah,
or
Jude,
more
there
than
was
right
a
wingers.
well-known loyalist up in Dublin the last day with the far right marching behind the tricolour, and he was exposed. A guy who has been involved with the UVF, you know,
Uh,
and has, I think, as far as I'm aware, has got a conviction for loyalist terrorism.
are you
You
talking
know,
about
and
Winky?
he's up in Dublin marching behind that to keep the immigrants out.
Are you talking about Winky?
No, no, no,
What's
no,
his
no,
name?
no,
No, that's another
no.
case. Okay.
No, it's on social media. You know, I
Uh,
genuinely don't remember his
all
name.
right.
But
Because
they said this is a guy. One of the guys who's marching here is a guy who's actually a
uh,
loyalist.
jeez. Well, I suppose scum comes together. Right. Let's leave that for a moment. Simply to leave, I can't resist the temptation to do this quotation of Musk about Trump. He said, "Without me, i.e., Elon Musk, Trump would
Yeah,
have lost the election. Democrats would control the House, and the Republicans would be 51-49 in the Senate." Uh, he might be right, actually. But anyway, that is his parting jibe. Okay, move on
yeah.
to
Judy, he spent 235 million on Trump's campaign.
aye, aye. You think Trump would be as
A wee
JD
bit more
Vance
grateful.
as JD Vance said to Zelensky? Have you ever said thank you even once?
Have you ever said thank you? Yeah. Aye.
Okay, let's move on and look at things closer to home in Dublin and the Dáil. Jared Howland is an article in the Irish Times today, And he says there's never been a better time for a left alliance if they don't fall out first. And he says that the thing that brought them together in the first place, and I think that's pretty obvious, was the speaking rights in the Dáil, where
Yeah,
Neil Martin and company tried to get it both ways. But now you run into a problem almost immediately because the left finds it hard to cohere. Ruth Coppinger, who is a very formidable woman,
yeah, yeah.
she has talked about alternative politics, not just as alternative government. And she said she wants a common left platform has to challenge capitalism and the ideas of capitalism. Now, the fact of the matter is, Sinn Féin and quite a few social democrats, I'd say, are not, they don't see that as a sensible path. And frankly, I don't either. I mean, I would agree. I would like to see a better system than capitalism. It's a bad system. I think it brings out the worst in people. But
Mhm.
you've got to take baby steps before you take, massive steps.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
not going
yeah.
to win an election in the south of Ireland today saying we want to abolish capitalism. What you've got to do
No,
is we want to
definitely.
abolish that law or that rule which gets, benefits for people who are rich and leaves others homeless. Do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Should Mary Lou McDonald, Holly Cairns of the Social Democrats, Ivana back to take. I remember they would come all out to the plinth at the and outside the Oireachtas,
Hmm.
Dáil, after the government. Remember that they wanted, they were playing the double game. That you can be in government and in opposition at the one time. It was the first time I'd seen the left all united, and
Yeah.
I think Jude, they realised, wait a minute, this could work. This so on. But remember Brenton Behan's famous dictum:
Yeah. Yeah.
every time there's a party, the first thing on the agenda is the split on the left in Ireland. That is true. You can fight about some of the, this ideology. Now, your point about what he called Ruth Coppinger was, she says we have to basically overturn capitalism. Jude, that's right. The first thing first is all Americans, there'll be threats on American corporations that they're pulling out. There'll be the stock market, which will go into, and all the rest. Sinn Féin is not that stupid. In fact, Howland and his article said that the big, what do you call it, big stock, Davies went to London and met about 12 or 14 key investors and assured them that Sinn Féin nowadays was more new Labour than carbon Labour. That was
Hmm.
the terms they used, and
Hmm.
so on. And Sinn Féin are basically going to down the middle road. But here's the other thing, which reminds me. There's a friend of mine, he's called Peter Logie. He's a journalist in Australia. He's retired now. But Peter was big into his politics. He was a chief political correspondent for the Australian. But he talked about Bob Hawke. Bob Hawke stayed friends with all the big multi-billionaires in Australia, like Murdoch and Kerry Packer and all the rest. But when he became prime minister, he was very, very clever. He got a 9-day fortnight, working fortnight for, 1 week he worked 5 days, the next week he worked four. He got 37 and a half hour working weeks. He got a Medicare, stuff like that. He was very, very clever. He said, no, I'm going to play the game their way, but I'm going to change it from within. So if
Hmm.
Sinn Féin and Ivana Bacik of Labour and Holly Cairns from the source got into government, they could be smart. Don't frighten the horses, but do your own thing.
That's right. It's a terribly difficult one in some ways because if you look at history, the time when really serious change takes place isn't just that you inch towards being a better country or state. You tend to have an upheaval. You tend to have a real disorder. In fact, you have very often a violence, and then the
Mm.
new thing comes in. I don't think that the south of Ireland will move from capitalism without, a lot of people dying, frankly. So if you
Absolutely.
really care about the people, I would suggest that you'd be better to focus on what are the laws, what are the rules in terms of taxation of poor people and those who are extremely rich. There's so many bloody disgustingly rich people in the south of Ireland. Michael O'Leary, for example, didn't he get a 100 million bonus the other day?
Yeah, the only thing I have to say about O'Leary, O'Leary stays in Ireland, pays his tax in Ireland, etc. etc. He hasn't pulled any stunts like the Bono and all these great patriots, who buggered off to Holland and availed of the, what is the double Dutch or double
Uh,
Irish or
uh,
the
uh,
rest of
Double
it.
Irish.
O'Leary, okay, he's earning big, but he's paying big tax too. So I'm willing to give him a bye ball.
What you're saying, Pat, is he's better than Bono.
Well, fair enough.
That's a fairly
Well,
broad.
he's better. I know a lot. The Irish super rich are now like what do you call him? Dennis O'Brien lives somewhere foreign. JP McManus lives somewhere foreign. All these super rich guys, they've all moved out. O'Leary stayed, and I give him credit for that.
Well, Pat, supposing you were in their one of their shoes, and you had a choice between living in sort of West Indies heaven and living in Ireland where it rains all the time and you're paying bloody awful taxes, which would you take? You know, to be honest,
Donegal all the time. Donegal all the time.
I don't believe you. I really don't.
Uh,
Let's put it
uh,
like this. You know, you would give it a good hard think. But the point I would make is the fault doesn't lie with the people who avail themselves of the opportunity to live in the Bahamas or wherever and, you know,
yeah,
still be hugely wealthy. The fault lies with
mm,
the government or the laws that allows that to
mm,
happen. You know, there should be a law
mm,
that if somebody's living in the West Indies, well, that's their affair. That's where they pay their taxes. You know, they're
yeah,
not going to make money here. You just can't do the
no.
two things at once, opt out and at the same time claim to be Irish.
No,
Um,
I know, but the one thing you just triggered there, Jude, you're chatting about you're nearly saying to get different type of politics,
uh,
you need nearly a revolution type thing, and
uh,
so on, or at least upheaval.
uh.
Jude, I think what just came to my head, what's happening in America, Jude, it's almost as if now it's regression that they reach a certain point and they're going back the ways.
That's the trouble. You see, when you have upheaval, things can go any number of ways, and they might not
Yeah,
necessarily go the way you'd want. I think, like like me, you would favor a very seriously controlled capitalism first, at least,
yeah,
where there isn't. Actually, see, in many ways, the South is shameful. The fact
yeah,
that there's so many people who can't get a house, people who are struggling to make ends meet, and then there's the super wealthy people, you know,
yeah. But
living
Jude, I
in
was watching
bubbles.
your man Simon Reeves. He did a very very interesting program. He said no one of these guys goes visiting places. He did South America and he did Greece
Oh
after
yeah,
the
yeah.
crisis, and he did Scandinavia. He finished there the last day. Scandinavia, Finland, Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. And he said they are the richest countries in the world, amongst the richest countries in the world, amongst the happiest countries. All of them are socialist. You basically free health, free education, up to university level. Now you pay high taxes, but you get high services. And yet we're following Ireland's following the British American model. I would love us to move towards the Scandinavian. I'm quite willing to pay if my kids get free health service, great education, and whatever, and get all the service and public transport is brilliant, etc. You live a really good, and they're frequently on all these indices, the happiest countries in the world. Jude, why are we following an American model and a British model of capitalism, where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer?
You see, well, now, Pat, you see what you've just described: the high taxation and a welfare state that's looking after you from womb to tomb.
Uh,
Do many Irish people actually know that such a thing is possible? I suspect they don't. You know, they'll say something like,
yeah,
probably dictatorship or something. There'd be a
yeah,
case, I think, for Sinn Féin or the left or whatever to say, look, here's exactly what these guys pay. They have to pay this.
yeah.
As a result, they get that. You know, I think that should be laid out for people. This vague notion that we'll try to improve the public health service or whatever, it's too bitty and too confusing. I think people would be at least interested in looking at how it is that some countries, as you say, manage to be happy, manage to be much more equal, and high taxation, yes, but also high welfare.
The Americans, the media, because they're run by capitalist class, socialism is a dirty word in America. Even some of them, as long as they keep those left wing socialists out of the White House. No,
Yeah,
these are people in the street. These are the guys who should need your unions, who are probably getting slammed by Medicare, who are probably not really that well looked after. No, the guys in the street, they're not the guys driving around in chauffeur-driven cars or
yeah.
flying off to the Caribbean. But they have this idea that it's the American way of life, and we should be allowed. Dude, they're more. They are. absolute morons. They have this idea that socialism is bad and capitalism is good, when the proof in their own country is the exact opposite.
Well, I agree with that, but there's also the contradictory, unexpected emergence of Bernie Sanders, who never holds
Yeah,
back from using the word socialism. And he
yeah,
presents his case so clearly, so well.
yeah.
If I had a political party, I would send a few of my TDs to the States and have them follow Bernie Sanders for about 3 months and learn from him.
Mhm.
He doesn't hold back.
Yeah.
He answers things straight and he's clear and sound in the ideas that he has. And
Right, Jude, before we go, because you've just said something. I have this profound wish when I watch British politics that Jeremy Corbyn and Len McCluskey and people like that, and what do you call him, Mick Lynch, would form a new left Labour Party, a new, not new in the as in Tony Blair Labour, going back to old traditional values, etc., and so on. Jude, I watched this week. Several Labour MPs have now got up and said, by the way, having a go at what's happening in Gaza, just me cutting across myself. The best guy in the House of Commons by far having a go at Israel as a Tory by a mile. He's had a go at them. He's
who's that?
described what happened last week as an abattoir. But anyway, Jude,
Which story was that, Pat? Could you
I
remember?
can't remember his name.
Yeah,
He was
okay.
a very well dressed one, but he stood up last week and he's stood up before. The Labour MPs are now coming out of the woodwork to saying we're opposed to it. Dude, it's cynicism gone wrong. They have stayed silent, massacre after massacre. But last week, because of the shooting of people going for food, and that's all, it's the outrage and the media, they're suddenly saying now, look, we have always been against this. And Keir Starmer, I think he is despicable.
Well, the thing about that, I agree again. I agree with everything you say, but the catch is Reform UK. Reform UK and the polls is showing up so bloody well that it's a contradiction, really.
But hold on, Jude. Would you the difference between now between Labour and the Tory? So
Nothing,
it's the same
nothing.
idea as,
Yeah.
as Trump. As Trump,
It's Fianna
so
Fáil and
Trump,
Fine Gael
Trump,
all over again. Fianna Fáil and
yeah.
Fine Gael, Tweedledum, Tweedledee. Both of them have the same, essentially the same
Jude,
politics.
but it was like this government in the Republic of Ireland is unloved. Nobody's, but there was no real alternative. Trump, I think the Democratic Party used to be the party of the working people and became the party of the elite. The Tories and the Labour and Westminster now are the exact same. And ordinary people who are getting screwed, they tend to go far right. You know,
Mm.
when they should be looking out of their own interests, which
Uh,
would be far left.
yeah, yeah. The trouble is, a lot of people, even in their own interests, if somebody says left, they may say, left, they lunatics.
I think that's why the Murdoch press has been playing that game for years. That
I
if
think,
you start to say, "We'll look after," they'd say, paternalistic capitalists. Let us look after you. We know best. Mum knows best.
I was talking to a woman yesterday, two women actually, and they were talking about religion, and I think they were both Presbyterians or something. But I said, what I'm coming more and more to believe, people largely take their values and the way to live their lives, not from their religion or their faith, or whatever that faith may be. They take it from the people around them. So
Yeah,
if people around them are driving big cars, that'll be their ambition. If people around them go on holidays in the south of France, they'll strive for that as well. In fact, the whole notion of being Christian, I don't know about other faiths, but the whole notion of being Christian is purely a theoretical thing, I think, 99% of the time. Otherwise, we wouldn't be saying, "Oh, let's go and help plucky Ukraine. Let's kill some Russians." I mean,
yeah.
that's not faith. And I
No,
think people accept very easily, and I'd find the same tendency myself, accept what most other people are saying or doing. There's just two truth tellers that I know, and you're one of them, and I'm the other.
on that note,
Okay, Pat, I'll try to get this bloody thing fixed by next week. Okay,
uh,
enjoy
all the
your
best, Jude.
weekend, my
Bye
man.
bye.
Okay.
Jude. Bye bye.
Fuck. Jesus.